We're going to think about it with parentheses. Some people, they still are thinking, they're still thinking back to middle school. And in middle school, instead of germ-DOS, what did we think of? PEMDAS or GEM-DOS. So some people are still thinking P, and that's okay today. If you want to put a P for parentheses, if that makes you happy, you do that. All right, what does E and R stand for? Good, exponents and roots. So what would an exponent look like? Like 2 to the power of 3, sure. And I write that 3 really nice and small. And what do we mean by roots? Square root, good. So what could we take a square root of? 25, sure. All right, and then we have adding, I'm sorry, we don't have adding. We have MD. What does MD stand for? Multiplication and division. And we have AS, adding and subtracting. So now when we do order of operations, we normally start at the top and we work our way down. But today when we use inverse operations, are we going to use the same order? No, we invert it. We do the opposite order. So where are we actually going to start? Yeah, adding and subtracting, and we work our way up. So that's kind of silly because it's a little bit different. You've been pounded kind of like to memorize germ-DOS, PEMDAS. It's always P first, then this, then this. But when we solve equations, we actually start at the bottom and work our way up because we're inverting it. We're reversing it. Okay? All right, we have 5 examples today. All the examples are going to be to solve. You guys are going to crush these. It's going to be great. So for problem 1, we have the square root of x equals 8. Let's just think this one through logically without having to solve it.
How many examples?
5 today. If I'm thinking about this, what I'm thinking about is the square root of what is 8. And I can look back at my pink sheet. The square root of what is 8? Yeah, 64. So when I see that square root of 64 is 8, I know the inside is supposed to be 64, which means the x is 64, because the x is what's number on the inside. So that's the way we can think about these problems. A lot of people, that comes naturally. But usually when we're in the middle of a solving equation, we like to think about doing things on both sides. So that's how we're going to switch it up for number 2. So for number 2, we have 3 square root of x minus 4 equals 26. All right, a couple of things to notice here is, where is our x located? Good. What's with the x? A square root. Good. And does the square root go over the x, or the x minus 4? Just the x. Okay. So what's on the same side as that x? A negative 4 and a 3 in the square root. So as I think of my order of operations, I want to work my way backwards. So I actually want to start with any adding and subtracting to undo that first. Do I have any adding or subtracting to undo? Yeah, I have that subtracting 4. How do we undo subtracting 4? Add 4, good, both sides. So we still have 3 square root of x equals 26 plus 4, 30. Now, what does it mean when I have a number touching a symbol or touching a letter? Multiply. Good. So if you need to throw in a time sign there to remind yourself it's multiply, do that. And how do we undo multiply? Divided by. Good. So divided by 3, divide by 3. So square root of x equals, what's 30 divided by 3? 10. Now at this point, this is where we're doing something different than yesterday. So if you want to use a colored pencil to show that this is different, this is the new part, you can. Sometimes that helps bring our eyes to what's the point of this whole page, because it can just look like a bunch of numbers. So throwing in some color is good. To get rid of a square root, we can take this to the power of 2. And if I do it to one side, I do it to the other. So I take this 10 to the power of 2. What that does is it undoes the square root. So I'm just left with the inside, just the x, equals, what's 10 squared? Good, 100. If your brain is working really fast and your brain was like 20, maybe right off to the side, just what does 10 squared mean? It means 10 times 10. And that's our answer. Pretty simple? Easy peasy? Good. All right, let's just double check that answer really quick, because that's going to happen later on that we're needing to do that. So 3 square root of, square root of, what did we say x was? 100 minus 4, and what do we want our answer to be? 26. Is that what we get? Yep, so 100 is our answer. We got it. All right, number 3. Number 3, we have 17 plus the square root of 3w equals 23. So what's with our w this time? There's a root with it. What else? A 3 and a 17. So we have to think, well, what are we going to undo first? Any adding and subtracting first? So we're going to get rid of the 17 first. Good. How do we undo adding 17? Subtract. Do it to one side. Other side. So we get the square root of 3w equals, what's 23 minus 17? 6. Now normally we have a multiplying and a square root. What would come next as we go the inverse? Multiplying. But this multiplying is under the square root. Last time with the multiplying, where was the 3 located? In front. It wasn't in the square root. It was in front of the square root. So this time, when it's under the square root, I can't get to it until I get rid of the square root. It's kind of like there's parentheses there. This 3 and w are together underneath it. Okay, so we actually have to get rid of the square root next. So how would I get rid of a square root? Take it to the power of 2. Do it to one side, other side. So that will get rid of the square root sign, and I'm left with the insides. And in the insides I have 3w equals, and again I'm thinking 6 squared means 6 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Good. If you weren't sure, you could always use your calculator. Otherwise, if you're not sure, you can use your pink sheet. Go back to your pink sheet, and that's on this first side here, where you see 6 times 6 is 36. So if that's struggling, you look at this first side. It has the squares. All right, and then our last step now is to get rid of the 3. So now we divide by 3. So it's a little silly because it feels like we should be doing that division first. But because that 3 and that w are together under the square root, we have to keep them together until the square root is gone. Now do we undo, or sorry, we already did that. And anyone know 36 divided by 3 for us? 12. Perfect. All right, we got 2 more. This next one I think is going to be the hardest problem. Number 5 actually gets a little bit easier, but there's an important part about number 5. That's why we have it. All right, number 4 is a little bit longer. We have negative 2 square root of x plus 7. And that square root goes over both the x and the plus 7. Okay. Plus 4 equals negative 15. So there's a lot going on in this one. So much. So if you like to think about it as friends, because I really like hanging out with my friends, and it's easy for me to think of this X as a person hanging out with friends. Who is X is like best friend? What's with that the closest? The 7. Yeah, so the X and 7 are those we want to keep together as long as we can. Then kind of who's the best friend? If we're going to undo this, the X and 7 are together the longest. Then if we keep working our way out, it would be the square root. And then the person that's kind of our friend is negative 2. And then the one that's really not our friend, and we're like, you're just kind of here, is the plus 4. So we're going to undo the plus 4 first, because that's the one that's kind of the furthest away. Okay, so how do we undo a plus 4? Subtract 4. All right, so we get negative 2 square root of x plus 7 equals, now if I have negative 15 minus 4. They're both negative, so it's like we're going to add. And together that would be negative 19. I wanted that to be negative 18. Can we change this 15 to a 14? Just so we can have to only erase once. Is that okay? Sorry. Something went wrong there. My bad. Otherwise, we were going to get a decimal. Is it okay to get decimal answers? Yeah, you can always get a decimal answer. That's how real life works, but I wanted it to turn out nice. So, switching that to a negative 14. All right, so negative 14 minus 4. Negative 18. There we go. Thank you for your patience. All right, now what are we going to get rid of? The negative 2, the square root, or the 7? The negative 2 is on the outside of the square root, so we actually get rid of negative 2 next. And when negative 2 is touching the square root, that means that they are multiplying. So how do we undo multiply? Division. So you can use that divide sign with the line and the 2 dots, or we can use that fraction sign, divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. So the square root of x plus 7 equals negative 18 divided by 2. What is negative 18 divided by negative 2?
9.
Positive 9, good. Now am I going to get rid of the square root or the 7? The square root, because the 7's inside with the square root. So I have to get rid of the square root next. So to undo a square root, we take it to the power of 2. On the left side, it looks really complex. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. But remember that 2 is just to help us get rid of the square root. So all we're left with is x plus 7 equals 81. And then our last step, subtract 7. Good. Whew. X equals 74. Trusting you. 74. Let's check it. Yeah? Isn't checking fun? It's kind of satisfying to see that we got the right answer. I like it. It's kind of a pain in the butt if you're required to do it, but when you're just doing it to double check. So negative 2 square root of x, what was x? 74 plus 7 And then off to the side, plus 4. And what do we want our answer to be? Negative 14. Hey, we did it. Happy dance. No? No happy dances? All right, last one, number 5. Now, you're probably like at this point, you're like, okay, we get it, Miss Merle. You just made us do this really, really hard problem. Maybe not that hard, but a long problem. Why are we doing one more problem? Because there's a little trick to this one. All right, number 5, last one for today. We have negative 6 square root of y equals 42. All right, and to undo this negative 6, they're touching, so that means multiply. And to undo multiply, divide. So now we have square root of y equals, what's 42 divided by negative 6? Good, negative 7. To undo a square root, square it. How is this one tricky? Just wait for it. What's negative 7 squared? 49. All right. How are we feeling? Made sense? You guys ready to get your minds blown? All right, if I have negative 6 square root, what did we say y is? 49. Do I get 42? No, I get negative 42. So it didn't work because I didn't get positive 42. What's wrong? Let's try negative 49. Oh, that doesn't even work. Can I square root a negative? Nope. So the thing is that when we did this square root of y equals negative 7, if I'm thinking the square root of a number equals negative 7, I'm going to look back at my pink sheet. Anytime I take a square root of a number, what kind of numbers do I get for all my answers? Positive. There is no answer here where I get a negative 7. It doesn't work. So for y equals 49, that's not our answer. There's never going to be an answer for this one. So we call that what? Not undefined. We just say no solution. Our calculator says undefined, but that's because our calculator doesn't understand the context we're in. So we're going to say no solution. And we're going to make a note here real quick. A square root cannot equal a negative. Which is a little silly, and it feels a little goofy because we're like, okay, well, we know that we could have negative 7 times negative 7 is 49, but it doesn't work out that way. Now, really quick, even if you put your notebook away, that's okay. Just take a look for a moment. If you go back to number 4, it equaled a negative. So why in number 4 could we get an answer, but in number 5 we couldn't? Good. Once we got to that square root, it was a positive, so we could do that. Here, when we got to our square root, it was a negative. Good. Nice job, everybody.